We shall move to questions without notice. Are there any questions? And I give the call to the Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Millions of Australians have now seen, with their own eyes, the Prime Minister's appalling behaviour on the Bush Deep podcast. Now he embarrasses all of us by refusing to apologise to the Prime Minister of Japan. Why won't the Prime Minister stop treating us like fools, man up and say sorry to the Prime Minister of Japan?
Order. Members on my... Order. Members on my right will cease interjecting. The Leader has asked his question. The Prime Minister now has the call.
Mr. Speaker, my office and my team have spent 4 years carefully rebuilding our relationships in the region.
Trashed by all of you.
We take our relationship seriously, including our regular engagement with Japan. And that is why we will always put the national interest first, and we continue to do so. The Prime Minister of Japan is a good friend of Australia. Prime Minister Takaichi is the third Japanese Prime Minister I have had dealings with. All of them have been constructive. She was a welcome guest here, as was one of her predecessors, Prime Minister Kishida. I have had the privilege of visiting Japan on 3 occasions, and our relationship has never been more strategically aligned.
The Prime Minister has concluded his answer. Give a call to the honourable member for Bonner.
Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering real change to strengthen Australia's economy, including by backing workers' wages and aspiration? What are the threats to this approach?
Call to order. Give a call to the Prime Minister.
Thank the member for Bonner for her question. And Labor is growing an economy that works for people, not the other way around. And that strategy has Australia performing strongly right across the board. Australia is indeed growing faster than all the G7 countries. Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK and the United States of America. Unemployment is lower than Canada, France, Italy and the United Kingdom. We have a higher participation rate than all G7 countries and stronger employment growth than 6 of the G7 nations. And just last week, Australia's stable economic outlook and AAA credit rating was once again confirmed. That is not to say, though, that there aren't cost of living pressures in the economy, which is why we understand that we need to deliver on cost of living measures. We understand as well that Australia's success comes directly from working people, from their hard work and their aspiration to build a better life. And that's why we're about delivering real change. And that begins with a fair go at work, with penalty rates being protected. Wage theft now a crime. If you work the same job, now you get the same pay. And today I met with the National Executive of the SDA, looking after people who work in retail, and they told me about examples of increases in salary of up to and above 30% as a direct result of same job, same pay, where people who are working together with the same experience, with the same supervisor, working the same hours, were getting paid differential rates. Unfairness in the workplace due to a manipulation of the system. We've stopped it, and it's making a real difference to working people. And just yesterday, we delivered new minimum standards and new minimum pay for gig economy workers. Today, we have introduced our legislation locking in wage justice for early childhood educators to deliver a growing skilled workforce. And that is how Labor governs, building our resilience, backing aspiration, delivering real change here and now, while always keeping an eye on the horizon to set Australia up for a stronger future.
The call to the honourable member for Fairfax.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Prime Minister. Can the Prime Minister assure the House that neither his office nor his department leaked official and private correspondence from the Government of Japan? And what steps has he taken to satisfy himself that this is the case?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for his question. We take our relationship seriously, including our obligations for engagement, including with Japan. I note that in a political stunt from the opposition, they have referred matters to the AFP. The AFP is, of course,
Members
course, completely independent of the government, and they'll undertake their work, and I'm confident about that.
Order. Members on my left. When the House comes to order, member for McEwen will cease interjecting. We'll hear from the honourable member for Forde.
My question is to the Minister for Education. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to support early educators while keeping costs down for parents? What has been the response?
Call to the Minister for Education.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Can I thank my friend, the formidable member for Forde, for his question? Mr Speaker, childcare workers do one of the most important jobs in this country, and when we were elected 4 years ago, many of them were leaving the job. They were leaving in droves, and that's not because they didn't love what they were doing. It's because they could earn more in a lot of other jobs than they could educating our kids. The attrition rate in some places was as high as 40%. That's 40% of the workforce out the door in any year. That's a crisis, but that's now changed, and it's changed for a reason. It's changed because of the 15% pay rise that we have delivered. Mr Speaker, as proof of that, there are now 20,000 more childcare workers right across the country. Job applications in some places have jumped by 30%. Job vacancies are down by 31%. In other words, it's worked. It turns out that if you pay people more people want to do the job. And, Mr Speaker, in the legislation that I introduced this morning, it locks all of this in. It's good for workers because they get paid more, but it's also good for parents too, because part of the legislation here is that childcare centres only get the funding if they also cap their fee increases, and that'll save the average family about $1,500 over the next 2 years. As part of the legislation this morning, I've also added another condition, and that's this, that childcare centres only get this funding if they meet the minimum safety standard. 95% of centres do this already. I want to get that to 100%. It's the sort of thing that I think every parent across the country would expect. It's certainly what all of our children deserve. So this is the trifecta. It's good for workers, it's good for parents, and it's good for kids. It's why everyone across the country is backing it, everyone except the Liberal Party and One Nation. But that shouldn't be a surprise, because whether it's cutting student debt or whether it's expanding paid prac or whether it's fixing the funding of our schools or whether it's paying childcare workers what they deserve, this only happens because of this Labor government and because of this Labor Prime Minister.
I think it's the crossbench. It's okay. Order. It happens to everyone. So, all right. Give the call to the member for Bradfield.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. We know that Australia's species extinction crisis is due to habitat destruction, invasive species and runaway climate change. And now 1 in 5 Australian bird and mammal species are at high risk from H5 bird flu, including seabirds, black swans and seals. Conservation scientists are calling for $200 million over 2 years to build that resilience of these critical species. Will the government commit that funding to give our wildlife populations the best chance of recovery?
Call to the Minister for Agriculture, the Minister for Fisheries and the Minister for Forestry.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I want to thank the member for Bradfield for that question. I know that she, like so many people in this place, are concerned about the impact of the H5 bird flu, and I know many members of the government have actually raised threatened species with me over many times in relation to what the government is doing. And as I said in this place many times, we have invested early in $113 million investment in preparedness for the bird flu. Of that $113 million, $47 million has specifically gone to improving habitat and improving biosecurity for captive held threatened species, native species, with a focus obviously on birds and the mammals that will be impacted by the H5 bird flu. The Minister for the Environment and the Environment Department also has another program which is $99 million for the Saving Native Species, which is also about improving the habitat of threatened species. Since the incursion of the H5 bird flu, we've also unlocked an almost $25 million, I think it's $24.8 million now with the states and territories in terms of the response on the ground in relation to the H5 bird flu, and that includes the preparedness that is happening on the ground by the states and territories. And I announced in this place yesterday that as part of that is the vaccination program. And I'm pleased to be able to say to the honourable member that the Victorian government has actually announced today that their state will begin vaccinating penguins, little penguins, and that vaccines from the Commonwealth have now arrived at Phillip Island, with little penguins both at Phillip Island and St Kilda to be vaccinated starting as early as next week. As part of the vaccination trials, we have looked at particularly wild birds and vaccinations, knowing obviously that vaccination is just a complementary part of that process and biosecurity is obviously our first line of defence. As part of the original $47 million investment, that biosecurity improvement has been really important, particularly for those threatened species that are held in captivity. So at lots of wildlife parks, including my own electorate, I've seen at Raptor Refuge, where they have protected wedge-tailed eagles, for instance, and masked owls, and made sure that they've improved their biosecurity and the separation from native wild birds to protect them, particularly in relation to their food and water supplies as well. So there has been a lot of preparedness done to make sure that as a government we are doing everything we can do to protect our threatened species. And certainly from our government we know the biosecurity is the front line, but the vaccination and the vaccination program will also be complementary, and I look forward to hearing from other states and territories as they work on those vaccination programs. But it is terrific news that we're going to start vaccinating little penguins in Victoria.
Call to the honourable member for Chisholm.
Thank you so much, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Aged Care and Seniors. How are pay rises delivering real change for aged care workers and the older Australians they care for? Why is this change needed after a decade of neglect?
Call to the Minister for Aged Care and the Minister for Seniors.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the member for Chisholm for a question. She's always been a champion for working people and for the people that they care for as well. Mr Speaker, on the 1st of August, aged care nurses got their 5th pay rise under this government. It means a registered nurse on the most common classification is now more than $36,000 a year better off than in 2022. An enrolled nurse on the most common classification is almost $32,000 a year better off. That's the type of money that helps people buy a home, take their kids on holiday, or just set up their family for a better future. All up, this Labor government has invested almost $18 billion into aged care wages in the past 4 years, the biggest investment in the history of our country. The Fair Work Commission determined that aged care work had been undervalued for decades. And let's be honest, Mr Speaker, a bloody big part of that was because it's mostly done by women. Better pay isn't just giving nurses what they're owed. It actually means better care for the older people who built our communities. We need those nurses, so we need to pay them properly. It seems fairly self-explanatory, Mr Speaker, a bit of a no-brainer. And yet, in a cosy speech to the Sydney Institute last month, The Leader of the Opposition didn't quite agree. He said the care economy has exploded. He said that this workforce is disproportionately unionised. He said it's been awarded hefty pay increases. And he said Labor then backed those increases with billions in additional taxpayer funds. Mr Speaker, I've read that passage a bunch of times now. And
Forrest.
maybe for once, the Leader of the Opposition might actually be onto something. Because you know what? That's all right. That's all correct. It's all true. When he says the care economy has exploded, he means we hired the nurses that Australians need. When he says they were awarded hefty pay increases, he means we gave them the pay rise they deserve. The Leader of the Opposition calling nurses disproportionately unionised, I can assure him, will be a badge of honour for the mighty ANMF. And when he says Labor backed it with billions in taxpayer dollars, yes, we did. That's not an attack, Mr Speaker. That is our record. He put care economy in inverted commas in his transcript. Inverted commas. Around the word care, like it's a rumour going around the place. Then he told us that the country is in a death loop. He had aged care nurses in the frame when he said it. When an aged care nurse's pay goes up...
Concluded. The Minister's time is concluded. Order. Before I call the member for pay, order. Just take a seat. Order. The member for Lyne. When the House comes to order, I'm pleased to inform the House that present in the gallery today is Mr Ben Goldsborough, MP, the member for South Norfolk in the UK Parliament. I'm also pleased to inform the House that present in the gallery today is a delegation of congressional staff from the United States Congress, including the Speaker's office, who I had the pleasure of meeting earlier today. And also we have Mr Connor Paul, a social worker, author and survivor advocate who is working to transform the family violence system to prioritise the unique needs of children and young people. At just 22, Connor's advocacy is helping shape national conversations on family violence to ensure young victim survivors receive the support they need. Welcome, Connor. We give the call to the honourable member for Page.
Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Yesterday, the Prime Minister accused millions of Australians who have used capital gains tax and negative gearing to get ahead of taking, and I quote, taxpayer-funded landlord welfare. The Prime Minister, the Treasurer and the Minister for Housing have all personally used capital gains tax and negative gearing on their investment properties. Why is the Prime Minister attacking millions of aspirational Australians for trying to get ahead, just like he did?
The call to the Prime Minister.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. Well, the member is either deliberately or accidentally misleading the House with that question, because yesterday, as he will know from Hansard, I was quoting Scott Pape, the barefoot investor, in the Herald Sun. Now, if the member wants to attack the Herald Sun for its coverage of housing issues, then that is a matter for him. I was quoting Scott Pape, Herald Sun, News Corp. If you have a problem, I suggest you take it up with Mr Pape.
Order. When the House comes to order. The House comes to order. We'll hear from the honourable member for Canberra.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. What is the Albanese Labor government doing to help with the cost of living, ease pressure on Australians and improve the budget? How does that compare to other approaches?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thanks to the member for Canberra for the wonderful job she does representing her community, but also the influential role she plays in our economic policy as well, Mr Speaker. Member for Canberra would know that inflation has come down now 3 months in a row. It finished the financial year much lower than the RBA and Treasury forecasts, and this is one reason why the RBA was able to hold rates steady yesterday for the second time since the budget. And they also put out new forecasts for lower underlying inflation and slightly stronger growth. Now, these are welcome developments, Mr Speaker, but we know that there are still substantial challenges in our economy. We know inflation is still too high, productivity is too low, and that we know that people are under pressure. And that's why we are helping with the cost of living by cutting income taxes again and again and boosting wages. It's why we're expanding paid parental leave, strengthening Medicare, making medicines cheaper, delivering real change to make the housing market fairer for first home buyers and young people, Mr Speaker. And we're doing this all at the same time, as the Prime Minister said, as we are managing the budget more responsibly than those opposite did. 2 surpluses, 2 updates in a row with more savings than spending, $200 billion less debt than the trajectory we inherited from those opposite. One of the 3 strongest budgets in the G20, Mr Speaker. And this is why the global ratings agency, S&P Global, reaffirmed Australia's AAA credit rating just last week, pointing to our sound public finances and modest debt by international standards, Mr Speaker. It now means we are one of only 9 countries with a stable AAA from all 3 major ratings agencies, a feat never achieved in any year of the Howard and Costello government, Mr Speaker. We are managing the budget responsibly in the face of inflationary pressures and global uncertainties. Now, those opposite, Mr Speaker, have announced commitments totalling $110 billion in bigger deficits over the next 4 years and $530 billion more debt within the next 10 years, Mr Speaker. By their own logic, their announced policies would push up inflation and push up interest rates. And when the member for Goldstein was asked about this by Andrew Clennell on Sunday, he said that he would offset it, Mr Speaker. And that's before Senator Bragg said today that the benchmark is another almost $500 billion in budget cuts, Mr Speaker. They can only offset numbers that big by coming after Medicare again like last time, or pensions and payments again, or jobs and wages, Mr Speaker. And this is another reason why the divisive and dangerous anti-worker agenda shared by the Liberals, the Nationals and One Nation would make cost of living pressures worse, not better. This side of the House is delivering real change. We're delivering cost of living relief. We're delivering tax cuts that those opposite opposed and voted against.
Once again, the member for Gippsland has been pushing the behaviour, which is unacceptable. He's warned, just like yesterday, and like the member for Goldstein, any more interjections. And the member for Goldstein was yelling during that answer as well. Order. The member for Corwell is warned. And everyone giving their commentary. And I just remind, we won't have the MPI today if we have round 2 like yesterday. Member for Goldstein. Member for Moncrieff, I'd like to hear her question.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Last week, the member for Sturt reportedly told a constituent she's working on big changes to the Prime Minister's toxic taxes on young people and shares. She said, quote, "I am also very conscious of young people using the share market to try and build up a house deposit and how this might work for them too," unquote. Does the Prime Minister accept that his toxic taxes will make it harder for young Australians to save for their deposit?
Call to the Treasurer.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Whether it's the Prime Minister, Treasurer, all members of the Cabinet.
Her seat. You don't give commentary once you've given the question. It's highly disorderly. The Treasurer will now have the call.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Prime Minister and every single member of his Cabinet takes the views of our caucus colleagues very seriously. And we take seriously the views that are put to us in our regular engagements in the communities that we represent around the country, Mr Speaker, as we go about implementing these very important and very ambitious reforms, Mr Speaker. And it's not unusual for good local members to relay to ministers issues which are raised by their constituents to ministers. That's how it's supposed to work, Mr Speaker. That's how it's supposed to work. Now, the member for Sturt is not just a good local member. The member for Sturt is an outstanding local member. An outstanding local member. And the good people of Sturt in that wonderful part of Adelaide are learning for the first time in some time what it's like to have a good, engaged, effective local member, Mr Speaker.
Pause a moment, Treasurer. There's far too much noise. I'm not happy with the level of noise. That clapping and yelling will stop. The member for McEwen will leave the chamber under 94A. When I'm bringing the House to order and reminding everyone about the standards and dignity of this House, trust me, that's not the time to interject. So everyone, asking everyone to be a little better today. The Treasurer has the call.
One of the reasons why the member for Sturt is such a good local member is because the member for Sturt, in conjunction with everyone on this side of the House, is delivering tax cuts for every one of the working people in Sturt, Mr Speaker. And I know that in Sturt there are 93,000 taxpayers who are getting a tax cut from this local member and this Prime Minister and his government because of her work, Mr Speaker. And every single one of those 93,000 taxpayers in Sturt would not be getting a tax cut if those opposite had their way, Mr Speaker. And the same goes for the 80,000 workers in Sturt who will be getting the Working Australians tax offset, Mr Speaker, which was at the core of our tax reform agenda in the budget, Mr Speaker. Now, the member for Sturt and every single member of this government has seen in the housing market a distortion which needs to be addressed, because for too long now the way that our housing market has interacted with our tax system is locked out too many people, particularly young people, from the great Australian dream of owning their own home. And so whether it's the member for Sturt, every single member on this side of the House, we've decided not to neglect that or deny that or delay that and consign another generation of Australians to a broken status quo. We have chosen collectively to do something about it, and we're proud of that.
The member for Casey is seeking the call.
I seek leave to table the member for Sturt's email to her constituent. Good local member, you'd want it on the record, surely.
Order. Resume your seat, the Leader of the House.
Leave's not granted.
Order. I'd like to hear from the honourable member for Maribyrnong.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Attorney-General. What action is the Albanese Labor government taking to address the privacy implications of smart glasses?
Call to the Attorney-General.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Maribyrnong for her question and acknowledge her ongoing commitment to this government's reform of privacy. As smart glasses capable of capturing images and recording video become more affordable and accessible, community concerns are also growing about privacy, surveillance and the potential for misuse. Recent media reports suggest a discounted AI-enabled version has sold out across Australia. Last week, I asked the Privacy Commissioner to prioritise consideration of the privacy implications associated with this technology. The potential for these devices to be used to covertly record, track, stalk and harass requires prompt and careful consideration. Their discreet design can make it difficult for people to know when they are being filmed, increasing the risk of unwanted surveillance and undermining Australians' ability to control how their personal information and images are collected. The increasing availability of this technology could have significant implications, particularly for women and children, who may be disproportionately exposed to inappropriate recording, harassment, intimidation or other harmful conduct. Research from the University of Sydney found many women are being filmed in gyms, workplaces, shops and university campuses, despite expressing discomfort or refusing consent. Analysis of hundreds of Instagram videos captured using these devices found a staggering 60% of point-of-view content contained behaviour classified as potential harassment. Mr Speaker, let me be clear. This government stands against the use of smart glasses for nefarious purposes. While state and territory laws already restrict the use of recording devices in some circumstances, The Commissioner's expertise is critical in identifying emerging privacy risks and appropriate safeguards. The Commissioner has noted that where technology companies receive and store personal information collected through wearable devices, they must comply with privacy laws, but there are real questions as to whether they will be able to do so. Mr Speaker, robust privacy laws are essential to Australians' trust and confidence in the digital economy and the services provided by governments and industry. In our first term, we created a new statutory tort against serious invasions of privacy, we outlawed doxing, and we significantly increased penalties for breaches. The government will continue to progress work on a second tranche of legislative reforms to ensure our privacy laws are fit for the digital age. Mr Speaker, Australians rightly expect their privacy to be respected, and that is exactly what this government is focused on delivering.
Before calling the member for line, I'm pleased to advise the House that on the floor of Parliament today is a historic delegation from the National Parliament of Timor-Leste, led by the first female president of the National Assembly and the first time a President of the Assembly has ever sat on the floor of our Parliament, Her Excellency Ms Maria Fernanda Ley, and an all-female parliamentary delegation. Welcome to Question Time. Welcome to Australia. Give the call to the honourable member for Lyne.
My question is to the Prime Minister. By bringing 1.5 million migrants into Australia over the past 4 years, Labor's record of migration has killed the Australian dream of home ownership. How many more migrants does the Prime Minister intend to bring into Australia before his government builds enough homes to house them?
Give the call to the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. I thank the member for Lyne for her question. And I do want to state that it is just a fact that under this government we have cut net migration by around 45% from its peak. The number of people arriving now is lower than it was under the Coalition. And indeed, the former Immigration Department Deputy Secretary under the Coalition has said this: the Coalition stomped on the accelerator. They did all sorts of things we've never done before in order to increase the numbers. Indeed, the Grattan Institute as well, Brendan Coates, has said that the Coalition is wrong to suggest record migration is the result of policy decisions by the Albanese government. The single biggest policy change contributing to record migrant numbers is the pandemic-era decision by the former Coalition government to first relax and completely uncap working hours for international students from January 2022. Thirdly, some more facts. Population growth is expected in the population statement that was released in January. Is expected to slow to 1.3% in 2025-26 and 1.2% in 2026-27, which is lower than the average of 1.4% that was experienced during the decade of the 2010s. By 2030-31, Australia's population is expected to be 754,000 smaller than what the former Coalition government was forecasting prior to the pandemic.
Order. Member for Swan is warned. Give the call to the honourable member for Macquarie.
Thank you, Speaker. My question's to the Minister for Climate Change and Energy. How is the Albanese Labor government delivering real change for Australians when it comes to energy? What policies would put a stop to this change?
Call to the Minister for Climate Change and the Minister for Energy.
504,470, Mr Speaker. That's how many Australians have put in a cheaper home battery in the last 12 months. Australia is now the home battery capital of the world, Mr Speaker. To put this in perspective,
the member for Barker.
Australians have put in 14.1 gigawatt-hours worth of home battery capacity in just over 12 months. The United States has a total of 9 gigawatt-hours of home battery capacity. Australians have put in more home batteries in the last 12 months than the United States has put in history, Mr Speaker. That is the Albanese government and Australians working together to reduce their bills and emissions, reducing bills for themselves and reducing bills for everyone else. And batteries have played a huge role in seeing the 47% reduction in wholesale prices in Australia over the last 12 months. Now, as the House knows, Mr Speaker, this is a transformation which is being led in our outer suburbs and regions. When the House last sat, I was able to tell the House that there are 5 federal electorates where more than 10% of the households have put in a cheaper home battery. I congratulated the Leader of the Opposition for the people of Hume having 10% of that electorate having put in cheaper home batteries. I can update the House over the break. It's now 12%. So big congratulations to the Leader of the Opposition. That's a great result. Not as good as the member for Wright, who now has 14% of the households in Wright have a cheaper home battery, Mr Speaker. Or the member for Greenway at 13%, or the member for Mitchell at 13%, or Mayo at 13%. But there's other news, Mr Speaker. I can tell the House there's now one more federal electorate which has tipped over and now has more than 10% of the households in that electorate having installed a cheaper home battery, and that is the honourable member who asked me the question, Mr Speaker, the people of Macquarie in Western Sydney, leading the way as the honourable member herself has led the way when it comes to climate action. Now, I'm asked what could get in the way of change. And the Liberals and Nationals have made it clear they would abolish this policy. Now, I understand this. I do understand. I get it. The concept of a popular energy policy is one that they have a lot of difficulty dealing with, given that they went to the last election with a $600 billion nuclear plan, which played no small part in costing them that election, Mr Speaker. And we're back here again. The member for Wannon said just a little while ago, we'll have more to say with our nuclear plan in coming months. There's a lot of work being done. It's nearly finalised. We'll be able to put it out very soon. Remember the former Leader of the Opposition saying it'll be out in weeks, and it was 8 months later and there was no costing? And the next time, Mr Speaker, there'll be no costing and there'll be no locations either, Mr Speaker, because they won't even tell the Australian people where the nuclear reactors will go next time. So we look forward to that debate. We look forward to the difference of Australians getting on with reducing their bills while the Liberals will put them up with their nuclear fantasy.
I give the call to the honourable member for Fowler.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. In Fowler, 46% of renting households are in rental stress and median personal income is $520 a week. Sydney house rents rose $50 a week last quarter. I'm hearing from landlords they're lifting rents ahead of the government's looming tax changes to meet costs. Within weeks of the COVID crisis in March 2020, National Cabinet acted to protect renters. Prime Minister, will you convene National Cabinet to put renters on the agenda before these changes begin?
Call to the Prime Minister.
I thank the member for Fowler for her question. I note that in the tax changes which were in the budget, that for existing people who have negatively geared properties, those changes absolutely continue. They can still negatively gear those properties because they're grandfathered, in spite of what some of the contradictions and some of the commentary has been. I note also that in an area that is growing, such as the member for Fowler's, that there will still be negatively geared properties available for new builds, which in an area where you have expansion of new housing is a good thing, because that not only benefits the people who want to take up the opportunity of negatively gearing a property, and good on them if they choose to do that. Importantly also, they're building supply, which will make a difference as well, because everything that we have done has been focused on supply. I'm asked about cost of living in Fowler as well, and I do note that around 65,000 taxpayers in the members' electorate will benefit from the tax cuts that came in on the 1st of July as a result of our re-election in May last year, tax cuts that wouldn't have been taken place had the Leader of the Opposition been elected as a minister and a Dutton government was sitting on this side of the House. I note also there'll be another tax cut on the 1st of July next year. I note as well, in terms of Listo, that around 8,500 could benefit. In terms of student debt relief, some 24,000 people in Fowler have benefited, and the Liverpool Medicare Urgent Care Clinic has seen 21,900 presentations.
The Prime Minister has concluded his answer. Give the call to the member for Moreton.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs. How is the Albanese Labor government working to help make our region safer, more prosperous and more resilient? How will the network of agreements with Pacific nations deliver for Australia and the region?
The call to the Minister for Defence Industry and the Minister for Pacific Island Affairs.
I thank the member for her question and her deep interest in this area. Speaker, we're in a permanent contest in the Pacific, and the Albanese government is strengthening relationships with our neighbours to deliver in the national interest. We turn up, we listen and act on Pacific priorities. We do this because the Pacific is our home, and our security and prosperity depends upon the security and prosperity of the region. Yesterday we tabled two landmark treaties with Fiji, the Ocean of Peace Alliance and the Vavale Union. The Ocean of Peace is Fiji's first alliance and only our fourth. Through 125 years of federation, Australia has had two allies. In the last year, under this Prime Minister, we've doubled that number. Speaker, entering an alliance is the greatest act of trust possible between two countries, promising to come to each other's aid at a time of existential danger. But assuming this responsibility with Fiji was a natural step. We have a proud history of serving together, and will now cooperate even more closely and develop even deeper levels of interoperability. The alliance also creates an obligation to consult on security threats to the sovereignty, peace and stability of either party. The Vavale Treaty sets out ambitious commitments across the breadth of our bilateral relationship. The Vavale Union will be a multi-generational endeavour to integrate our economies, our security and our peoples. And, Speaker, this is only natural, given Australia proudly has the largest Fijian diaspora in the world, including the first Cabinet Minister of Fijian heritage in the Attorney-General. This treaty commits us to combat transnational crime, to work together on health issues like HIV, to address the impacts of climate change and build infrastructure like ports to connect our region and grow the Fijian economy. Speaker, these treaties build on a network of agreements which seek to protect our interests and keep Australians safe. The Pukpuk Alliance with our closest neighbour PNG. The signing of the Nakamal Agreement with Vanuatu, which confirms Australia as the policing partner of choice and precludes the establishment of any foreign military base in Vanuatu. Our treaties with Nauru and Tuvalu that respond to their priorities. Speaker, we're also pursuing comprehensive treaty negotiations with the Solomon Islands to reset the relationship with them, as well as a treaty with Tonga. So, Speaker, from Prime Minister Albanese walking the Kokoda track with Prime Minister Marape to the DPM's energetic engagement, to Foreign Minister Wong's visits to the PIF countries and my 37 visits to the region, we're working tirelessly to deliver a stronger region in our national interest, and I commend the two treaties to the House.
Before I call the honourable member for Mallee, I'm pleased to advise the House as members as guests of the member for Groom, Jim Rawlings, Tony Beaverland, Tom Carroll from the Toowoomba Chamber of Commerce. Give the call to the honourable member for Mallee. Order. The Minister for Agriculture is warned. The member for Mallee will begin her question.
My question is to the Prime Minister. Today I met with older Australians at Parliament House who are scared of Labor's $11 billion tax on private health insurance. This health tax means older Australians will face a 21% surge in insurance premiums and out-of-pocket costs increasing by over $800 a year for an individual and more than $1,600 for a couple. Why is the Prime Minister imposing another toxic tax on millions of older Australians?
Call to the Minister for Health and the Minister for Ageing.
Thank you, Speaker, and I thank the member for her question. I don't agree with various aspects of the modelling that the Shadow Minister has obviously picked up from the industry, and I'll address that. But she asks why we have taken this decision. And as we made clear from the time I announced it before the Treasurer's budget speech, we have taken this decision, which is a hard decision, I accept, to fund a necessary expansion in aged care services, to deliver more beds, to deliver more packages at home and to deliver better care. And one of the reasons why we had to do that, to the Shadow Minister's question, is the appalling state that the former government left the aged care system in when we came to government. After cutting the budget time and time again, leaving the sector in a position described by the Royal Commission in one word, neglect, we unapologetically have prioritised investment in care and dignity for older Australians who need it. Now, this is a hard decision, but it is a decision that returns the treatment of private health insurance subsidies to its original position, which did not differentiate between age groups. What we will now see is two households next door to each other on exactly the same income who take out private health insurance receiving the same level of support from taxpayers for the payment of their private health insurance premiums. In the case of most members of private health insurance, taxpayers will fund about a quarter of their private health insurance, and that will remain the case. Now, the Shadow Minister has talked about some modelling. The Treasury has made it very clear what the modelling of this will mean at about 44,000 people leaving private health insurance, or less than 0.5% of membership, at a time when membership is increasing by 2%. Now, the Shadow Minister parrots modelling from the insurance industry. We will remember when the insurance industry said that 1.6 million people would leave private health insurance when we means-tested the private health insurance premium under the last government. And indeed, insurance membership went up. It went up. It didn't go down at all. We also know that Melbourne University, not the government, certainly not the insurance industry, last week indicated modelling that was even more modest than the modelling released by Treasury. So I'll return to the question of why we are doing this. We are doing this as a hard decision to fund the necessary budget investment in an aged care system to support a growing number of older Australians who need it. So the question is, what is the opposition proposing here? We don't do this aged care investment? We don't invest in more beds? We don't invest in more packages? Or have you got another idea to pay for it? If you have, tell us what it is.
Order. Give a call to the honourable member for Bullwinkle.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Housing. How is the Albanese Labor government providing safe and secure housing for women and children escaping family and domestic violence? And what are the risks to these policies?
Call to the Minister for Housing, the Minister for Homelessness and the Minister for Cities.
Speaker, thank you so much, and I want to thank the member for Bullwinkle for her question. Speaker, she is a brilliant advocate for her local community and brings into this chamber a lifetime of service to our health system and to Australians through her career in nursing. And I really want to thank her for the particular focus that she has put on this problem that we face as a nation on domestic violence. Speaker, our country faces a domestic violence crisis. I think every single person in this chamber cares about that, and I think every person in this chamber agrees with that. Australian women tell us that one of the main reasons that they choose not to leave a violent relationship is because they do not have a safe house to go to, and that should not be happening in a country like Australia. Tragically, family and domestic violence remains the leading reason why Australian women and children find themselves homeless in our country. So when someone asks, why doesn't she leave, there is a better question for us, and that is, what home would she go to? Speaker, our government is helping provide an answer to that question. Today, we announced an investment of $308 million for 448 new crisis and transitional homes right across Australia. Speaker, these homes will provide, through the lifetime of that investment, safe housing for 22,000 Australian women and children at that moment in their lives where they most need and deserve the support of governments. Now, Speaker, these houses will not just be a roof over people's heads. They will be connected to the support that women and children need to heal from these completely traumatic experiences that they've gone through. This will connect women and children to the supports. They will regain their independence and have the support they need to rebuild their lives. Speaker, this is what housing delivery looks like, and it's part of a $1.2 billion record investment that our government is making just in crisis and transitional housing around our country. It sits alongside, Speaker, 7,200 social and affordable houses that we have already built, most of which have already been tenanted, on the pathway to 55,000 homes. Now, Speaker, I'm asked about alternative approaches, and I think we use similar rhetoric when we talk about domestic violence in this chamber. We don't see the same level of action. Over the 9 years the Coalition were in government, they built just 9 crisis and transitional homes around our country. Speaker, I don't want to politicise an issue like this, but the parliament does need to be accountable. And, Speaker, I hear the guffaws and I hear the laughter on the other side of the chamber, but you can't hide from these numbers, Speaker. 9 crisis homes delivered over a 9-year period in government, and that is a disgrace. Speaker, under this Labor government and under this Labor Prime Minister, we take a different view. We're delivering real change and we're making a real difference to the safety and security of Australian women and children.
Time has concluded. The call to the honourable member for Clark.
Speaker, my question is to the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, I've referred to the National Anti-Corruption Commission my concern that individuals in the federal government, when formulating gambling policy, have been improperly influenced by individuals in the private sector. Clearly, donations, gifts, hospitality and personal relations have resulted in a gambling policy diametrically opposed to research, public opinion and the public interest. Do you agree this constitutes corruption? Do you understand how the donations, etc., have compromised your government and its judgment?
I'll hear from the Leader of the House.
Speaker, ordinarily the reflections contained in a question like that could only be done by a direct motion, not through a question.
Yeah, there's part of the reflection at the end of the question regarding that part of the question. I'm going to rule that part out, as previous speakers have done before in that kind of topic. But the question, the Prime Minister can deal with parts of that question, not just the reflection at the end. Prime Minister.
Thanks very much, Mr Speaker. I note that the member for Clark, as he stated in his own letter, there's been no allegation of wrongdoing against any individual. I also note that the member for Clark is very genuine in his commitment and for his position that is long-standing on these issues. So he deserves to be taken seriously. What we need to do in a debate like this that can be emotional is to make sure that we get the policy right. And our government is determined to get the policy right. We have exchanged views across the parliament, including with crossbenchers, including with the opposition, and we will get it right. We will get it right to make sure that we actually address an issue which is problem gambling. I've said before, and some have been critical of it, but I stand by my view that there is nothing wrong with someone having a punt on a Saturday in the pub. What there is something wrong with is if people are addicted to any form of activity of which you could put drinking, the difference between having a beer and being addicted to alcohol that has consequences, the issue of a range of other areas. Now, the member refers to the NAC. I note this point, that the National Anti-Corruption Commission was promised for a long period of time. It took the election of my government to deliver one. It took the election of my government to deliver one. We established it. When it comes to political donations, of course, they're a matter for the party in the organisation in accordance with the relevant laws. And, of course, anyone is entitled to make a referral. But I would say to the member with respect, have a consideration of the debate based upon substance rather than motives. This is a government, and I know in the exchanges I've had with members of the opposition, with members of the crossbench, people come to these issues with a genuine perspective. And we have genuine differences as well on some of these issues. But to question people's motives is, I think, undermining the civil debate that is required on these issues. We'll continue to promote. The legislation is before the parliament today. It hasn't been influenced certainly my position has not been influenced in the way that is suggested, I'm sure, of all of the members on this side, and I don't suggest members on any side of this debate have been influenced, other than by how do we deal with an issue that is complex, it isn't simple. Overwhelmingly, as the member full well knows and was experienced in the last parliament, the major issue of addiction and problem gambling is poker machines, which are not dealt with by this jurisdiction but are dealt with by state and territory governments. So we will have a debate on our legislation. Constructive discussions are continuing. I expect there will be amendments to the legislation that I hope receive the support of the entire parliament.
The call to the member for Bass.
Hear, hear. Thank you, Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Health. How is the Albanese Labor government strengthening Medicare and making it easier to see a doctor for free after a decade of cuts and neglect?
Terrific. Call to the Minister for Health and Ageing and the Minister for the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Thank you, Speaker, and thanks to the member for Bass for her question, for her support for our Medicare agenda, and for hosting me again during the winter break in beautiful Launceston. We got to see the terrific urgent care clinic in that town again. It's seen more than 65,000 people, more than any other urgent care clinic in the network. It's just a terrific exemplar. We also got to meet some of the doctors who've taken up the bulk billing incentives that have been part of our budgets. And like the rest of the country, Speaker, as the member knows, bulk billing rates in Bass were in freefall when we came to government, thanks to a decade of cuts and neglect. But our investments have turned that around. Bulk billing for pensioners and concession card holders in Bass had got down to just 8 in 10 visits, but now I'm pleased to say it's over 90% again and continuing to climb. And bulk billing increases for people without that concession card have been even bigger in Bass. They've climbed by more than 21%, Mr Speaker. We've seen similar increases right across northern Tasmania. Indeed, Speaker, bulk billing is up in every single state and territory, thanks to our record investment, delivering literally millions and millions of additional free visits to the doctor every single year. And that's delivering real change for Australians, Mr Speaker. It's delivering real cost of living relief in their household budgets, and it's delivering a stronger Medicare. But, Speaker, that could not be further from the position of the opposition on Medicare, evidenced by that decade of cuts and neglect. We've known for decades, literally, Mr Speaker, that they've never supported bulk billing. The father of the modern Liberal Party, John Howard, described bulk billing as an absolute rort. And through that decade of cuts and neglect, the former government tried to abolish bulk billing entirely. The Shadow Treasurer has described Medicare as, and I quote, a system designed to keep people ill, Mr Speaker. A pretty extraordinary description, but at least the Shadow Treasurer has had a stab at it and expressed a view. The Leader of the Opposition, I continue to search his website every week or so, still can't find a single mention of Medicare or health policy on the Leader of the Opposition's website. And, of course, the Shadow Minister has had to ask my department for help in understanding what Medicare means in the first place, Mr Speaker. Asking the department for a definition. We've helpfully provided her with that, and hopefully that will give her a foundation to put together a health policy for the next election so they don't have to simply copy ours. Well, Mr Speaker, the member for Bass, she knows what Medicare means. She knows it means universal access to the best healthcare system on the planet, no matter where you live, no matter your ability to play, and that means a healthier Australia.
That's the crossbench. Give the call to the member for McKellar.
Thank you, Speaker. Today, this week is Dentists on the Hill week. Dental decay remains the most common preventable chronic disease in Australian children. Roughly 1 in 3 children has tooth decay by school entry, and 1 in 4 is living with untreated decay. After the UK implemented a sugar-sweetened beverage levy 10 years ago, there was a dramatic reduction in the number of children requiring tooth extractions due to decay. When will the government put the health of Australian children first and implement a sugar-sweetened beverage reformulation levy? Thank you. Thank you.
Give a call to the Minister for Health. Yep.
Speaker, I'd just like to point out that it was our question, and the member was on his feet. Now, you've said that sometimes, and it happened earlier, when a member wasn't up getting the call, that we have to have the right order. So I respectfully ask you to give the member the question, just for the consistency and order of the House. Thank you.
Look, I will admit that I made the mistake there. So when I make mistakes, I own up to them. Order. Order. So, order. No, we're just going to deal with this. I like to treat everyone fairly, and I'll treat the opposition fairly. So I apologise to the member for McKellar that I had the wrong order list here, so I'll take that responsibility. So, with the House's indulgence, I will give the call to the member for Fairfax. And before that, the Prime Minister.
Yeah, just point of order, Mr Speaker. It might be just efficient to say, given we've heard the question, if we get the answer and then the member for Fairfax next, and then we'll conclude question time.
If that's concurrence with the manager, we can do this in a
as long as the member for Fairfax gets to answer his question, we're happy to oblige.
Order. Okay. All right, order, 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 order. Teamwork is the dream work. So we'll go. The member McKellar has asked her question, the Minister for Health, and then we'll go to the member for Fairfax.
Thank you.
Minister for Health.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm happy to take the question on behalf of the government, and I acknowledge the member's interest in this area and our many conversations about public health issues around obesity, but the way in which the members framed it today around childhood tooth decay. First of all, I'd like to give a shout-out to the work the member for Sydney did when she was Health Minister to put in place the Childhood Dental Benefit Scheme, a great advance around oral health for young children. We've been consistently struggling with the low uptake, frankly, of that program. I think it's still less than 40% of eligible children are taking advantage of significant free dental services that they're eligible for if they're from a family with family tax benefit. I'd love to talk with the member and anyone else about ideas to lift that uptake, and I know I've talked to the dental industry about that. But the member raises the question of sugar consumption, which is a very significant public health issue. I can indicate, as a short answer to the member's question, that there are no plans to introduce a tax, if you like, on sweetened beverages of the type that the UK and some other countries have done. But I do want to indicate a couple of other things that we're doing here. One of the challenges for parents, as I think we all know, is understanding what is in the food that is on the shelves of the supermarkets. Although there are different views about a tax in the community, there is overwhelming support for better front-of-packet labelling. We introduced that scheme back when I was the Assistant Minister for Health well over a decade and a half ago on a voluntary basis, with an expectation that uptake by industry would have reached about 70% by this year. It's about half of that. And so the Assistant Minister for Health, working with her colleagues, has indicated that that front-of-pack labelling that tells parents exactly what is in the food that they're putting in the trolley will be made mandatory. And there's a process underway right now, and that will return to health ministers, I think, early next year. There's also, frankly, the question of formulation of foods, including sweetened beverages. And one way of changing that is through a tax. And we are conscious of the fact, for example, that a can of Fanta in Australia might have more than 6 teaspoons of sugar in it. It now has less than 4 teaspoons of sugar in the UK. But we want to continue to talk with industry about whether there are different ways to skin that cat. I would like to see a reformulation of a range of products that have high levels of sugar in them, that particularly children consume. The Assistant Minister will be meeting again with industry later this month to put together a work plan to work through some of that. And I think industry, frankly, needs to consider the question of why voluntarily they could not reduce the sugar content of some of these sweetened beverages down to the level you do see in other countries without the imposition of a tax.
Give a call to the member for Fairfax.
Thank you so much, Mr Speaker. My question goes to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has now been asked 3 times why he will not apologise to the Prime Minister of Japan for his appalling behaviour on the Bush Deep podcast. 3 times he has refused to give a straight answer. My question to the Prime Minister is whether or not he will follow the example of someone else in this House who's made it very clear when he makes a mistake, he owns up to it.
Order. Prime Minister has the call.
Thanks, Mr Speaker. Well, the fact is that I have worked and the government has worked to improve relations in our region and indeed right around the world to repair them. And our relationship between Australia and Japan has never been stronger. We have never been more strategically aligned than we are today. And my government's made the significant decision to procure the upgraded Mogami-class frigates for Australia's General Purpose Frigate program, a reflection of the trust between our two nations. Our enhanced defence and security cooperation increases the interoperability between our defence forces, and indeed one of the activities that I've done as Prime Minister is to welcome the naval fleets from all of the Quad countries into Sydney Harbour for the joint operations that is occurring. And indeed, throughout the visit of the Japanese Prime Minister as well, one of the things that we did then was to establish the Australia-Japan Leadership Dialogue. This is a 1.5-track dialogue which will bring together leaders and experts from across government, academia, business and civil society to help address the most important issues in the Australia-Japan relationship. I look forward to continuing to have a very good and positive relationship with the Prime Minister, as I have with leaders in our region.
Order. Give a call to the honourable member for Leichhardt.
My question is to the Minister for Skills and Training. How is the Albanese Labor government's Free TAFE program backing Australians, including in the Torres Strait, to get the skills they need to support their community? Does anything stand in the way of more of these opportunities?
Call to the Honourable the Minister for Skills and Training.
Thanks, Speaker, and thanks to my friend, the member for Leichhardt, for his question. In just a short time in this place, he has already made a really significant contribution. And when the Deputy Prime Minister and I had the great privilege of joining the member in the Torres Strait last week, we saw just how effective a member he is, respected and recognised everywhere, although, as he did say, he is hard to miss.
It was just over a year ago that I was in the Torres Strait on Thursday Island to announce our investment in a new health hub for the TAFE campus, meaning people could study nursing without having to leave the Torres Strait. And so it was fantastic to return to see what this investment, together with Free TAFE, is delivering. And it was great to meet Ash, a Torres Strait Islander who is well underway towards completing his diploma of nursing, and he'll be one of the first to have completed his whole course on country. Ash told me and the Deputy Prime Minister that studying this course simply would not have been possible but for Free TAFE. So, Speaker, Ash is one of the hundreds of thousands of success stories that have come from Free TAFE. And Ash symbolises why Free TAFE is so important. Free TAFE is changing lives. It's backing more Australians into good, secure jobs that our communities need right around the country. It's also backing more First Nations people to learn and to train on country, which we know means more course commencements, more completions, and also engages more people around those students in learning. So it's stories like that of Ash's that remind us on this side of the House how important the work we're doing is, especially making Free TAFE permanent. And it's why I continue to be surprised, shocked indeed, that the Liberals, the Nationals and One Nation have teamed up to try to block permanent Free TAFE. But thanks to the work of the Albanese Labor government, Free TAFE is here to stay. Free TAFE is here to stay, with 100,000 placements guaranteed each year from 2027. And the only thing that stands between more Australians accessing those opportunities that Ash has, more opportunities in the jobs that come from Free TAFE, are those opposite. A coalition of cuts and chaos who always talk down Australians and talk Australia down. This side, Labor, is the party of TAFE. The opposition leader here, he can't even say the word. He can't even say the word TAFE or look up Medicare online, it seems. But on this side of the House, with Free TAFE, we keep on delivering real change, backing Australians like Ash to get the skills they want to do the jobs we need, from the Torres Strait to Tasmania, right across to WA and everywhere in between.
Mr. Prime Minister. Prime Minister.
You got two in a row and they're still complaining, Mr. Speaker. I ask that further questions be placed on the notice paper.